Rich people of Reddit who married someone significantly poorer. What surprised you about their previous way of life? My so said today I made rent, meaning today I've earned enough, accumulated enough to pay the rent, and I realized that this is a monthly accomplishment to someone with no fixed income salary. I fell in love with my uni best friend who really didn't have any money. When I got a job for my birthday, I decided to plan a holiday and offered to bring him along. It didn't even occur to me that this was his first ever holiday he'd ever taken. His family could never afford it growing up, and he'd never really thought to do it as an adult. Edit. Rip inbox. Thank you all for the love and support. Sandwiches. When I made him a sandwich, I only put one thin slice of meat in it. He couldn't believe that was how I had sandwiches growing up. My experience is from the opposite perspective. I was the poor one. It absolutely floored me how my wife acts when something broke, like a car, appliances, clothes, etc. As a child living below the poverty line, replacing a tire or other necessities was a disaster, requiring tricky trade-offs in the budget or just plain acceptance of just how boned you were. When my wife's phone broke, I went into full panic mode while she shrugged and said, "We can just a new one this afternoon." And then we did. Edit. Whoa. I have received a lot of responses on this. By far my most upvoted comment. You guys made my day. Thank you. I have seen a few repair it comments. Like many of you, I am also a Picasso MacGyver of the duct tape and trash bag world. This skill helped me break into IT. Sadly, the phone was beyond repair. Trust me, if I could have fixed it, I would have. And thank you for the silver. Last edit. Y'all are giving me too many medals. I am very flattered. But this is going to spoil me. When we moved in together, I found out that she was putting her share of the rent on her credit card, with no real plan for how to pay it off. Edit. If you're coming in here to say you can't pay rent on a credit card or you were her plan, lem save you a few keystrokes. Don't. Honestly, food insecurity. When we were first married, she would get visibly uneasy if the food in the house was running low. She never overate or anything. She was just always concerned about it. A lot of times when she was younger, she went hungry. On the humorous side though, she hates camping. Her answer is always the same. I camped because it was fun. She camped because they couldn't afford hotels. I'm from the poorer family, not super poor. But my in-laws have a stupid amount of money, so by comparison I'm very poor. But I think I can answer for her. We have 2 young kids. And my wife was shocked when I said we should look for clothes and toys for them at local flea markets and garage sales. The idea never occurred to her that we could save money by getting some gently used items. She had never even been to a garage sale in her life. She has grown to love them and now questions whether it is worth it to buy any item new or not before running to Amazon or a store. Her parents think it's disgusting we make our kids wear clothes that another child had before. But they don't pay my bills. Rich people of Reddit who want to marry someone significantly poorer. Hello. And X200B. And X200B. Edit. Figures my most upvoted comment on Reddit is me being a gold digger. But I will take it as a win, since I got gold. Hamburger helper. She hates it because it would be her meal 5x a week growing up. I had never even seen HH before I went to college and love that stuff. 10 for $10 deals are awesome. The prevailing mindset in his community growing up that insurance was something only rich people had. Not health insurance. Mind you, well, not just health insurance. Auto insurance. Going without it was a way of life for most everyone he knew. Long-term dating. Pets. I was always surprised by the number of pets she and her family had living in the trailer and how much of a share of their income they spent on them. I didn't marry this woman, but when we started dating, she always wanted to chill at my place. Never hers. Which was fine. But she gained 35 pounds in just like a few months of dating. She was 100 pounds when we started dating. Not that it was a bad thing. 1. I am a chubby man, and 2. I was just glad she wasn't pregnant. Anyway. Turns out her family couldn't afford dinner sometimes. So suddenly she had a place to eat every night and gorged herself. I dated a 1%er briefly. She was surprised I willingly went inside fast food restaurants. Edit. Since people are saying 1% is still a huge range in income, I just looked up a daddy pools and $10,000 000 a year. I'm from an upper middle class American family and my husband is from a poor SC Asian family. It is hard for me to wrap my head around how poor they really were when he was growing up. He told me about eating only rice with sugar for meals because they couldn't afford meat. They were probably living off less than $0.50/day for a family of 5 at times. Credit cards were avoided. For me growing up, we were encouraged to get a credit card in our name and use it as much as possible in order to build credit. There was always money to pay it off each month. So it made sense to 1. Build credit and 2. Collect airline miles or whatever the reward was back in the day. When we got together, she always used cash or a debit card. She had a credit card for emergencies and avoided using it otherwise. It took a long time to get her over her aversion skepticism. We were fortunate to have 2 good paying jobs. Though it also taught me a healthy appreciation for what it means to have a financial cushion. Not rich, but with a partner who was raised by a teen mom and grew up poor. Sometimes I just want rice and vegetables for dinner. That's a no from her. She won't go back. When the family had people over for dinner, if they ended the prayer before the meal with F.H.B. Amen, it was a signal to let the children know that they don't have enough food for everyone. So take smaller servings and let the guests get a regular serving. FHB equals family. Hold back. Double quote. They were always generous to their friends and didn't let their lack of funds embarrass themselves when doing so. I am on the other side as I married a girl from a rich family. Although we both earn the same and I tend to worry about money savings future. Through the years I have realized that she worries less about it and still saves more and spends less than me. I feel like coming from a lower middle class family makes me think about saving more, but at the same time I spend money on things as I could not have them all before I got my own job. My partner and I are both poor. But different kinds of poor. She's never been homeless or not had enough to eat. While I have. She's extremely frugal and hates buying anything we don't need. I feel a desperate need to stock up if we have any extra money, and it's a fight for me not to fill our house with canned and dry goods in case we don't have enough money to buy food next month for some reason. It makes no sense, but my instinct is to hoard food because there just was never enough of it around growing up. I'm not rich at all, but my husband came from a very poor Mexican village. He told me he used to shower outside because there was no in-house plumbing and use leaves as toilet paper. I mean, there's poor. And there's my husband's previous life poor. He's been living in the US for 12 years now, but when we first met it was so interesting seeing life through his childlike eyes. Going to the cinema was a huge event for him. Heating food up in a microwave was a totally foreign concept. And staying at fancy hotels when we went on vacation was like whoa. I still see him surprised by things now and then, and it just reminds me how much I take my middle status class for granted. She and her mother lived with her grandfather to not be homeless because her grandfather owned a house. She was putting community college payments on her credit card and building debt with it. I paid off her credit cards when we were dating and she cried from me being so nice. It was only like $300. I bought a condo. Then we got married. Then we bought a house. I never really considered myself rich until I started dating her and learned that a trip to Wendy's was a treat. I grew up middle class. And we are currently middle class. He was making good money but came from a poor family. One thing that surprised me was the lack of budgeting. No knowledge of a 401k Roth IRA. Retirement seemed like something that he'd never get to do. So even though he made good money, he was starting to rack up credit card debt. Now he's much better at it than I am. He adores budgeting and looks forward to FIRE. Edit. FIRE is financial independence. Retire early. There's a sub attached to this idea of financial independence. Sorry about the confusion. One of my exes could pull in a lot of money. Easily twice or thrice what I could. He was so incredibly bad at saving this money. Down to, say, setting himself up as a company to avoid paying higher rate of tax. But then paying a large amount each month to an accounting company to handle his taxes. Which he'd do himself anyway because he didn't trust them to get it right. He'd pay for taxes from one end of the city to another or hire cars rather than use public transport. Flights cancelled? Book new ones. Never bother to claim back on insurance. Buy a sports car. Wreck it. Sell it for scrap. He'd work contracts and then take time off to work on his own startup. But spend every weekend just going out and buying drugs and booze. I thought it was really fun and wild at first, haha. Money really means nothing to you. But when we became a long-term couple I started feeling like his mother. Man. Will you not just fill out the insurance paperwork? Asterisk. My wife was born and raised in the Soviet Union. She still goes crazy for fresh fruit like it's the most extravagant luxury. I was with a girl for a while who grew up in a pretty broken home. Still surprises me just how bad her spending habits are. She racks up credit card debt like it's nothing. More of a funny incident. But I was the poor one. My husband, at the time still boyfriend, took me out to a very nice restaurant. Waiter asked if I want pepper on my Caesar salad that was just made tableside. I said sure and he goes about it. Thing is, I didn't know you had to say stop. My husband slowly realizes this, but decides to see it play out. He did eventually say that I need to say stop. I just thought a Caesar was had this way as it was my first time even eating a salad that wasn't just iceberg and ranch dressing. It still tasted fine. Just a little bit too much pepper, haha. My wife earned many times more than I did when I was a high school teacher back when we were dating. She sometimes would drive my 10 years old Prima Black stick shift Honda Civic that my cousin lent me until I could buy another car. She was blown away how aggressively mean people are to you when you drive an ugly old car. When she got out of the car the spell lifted. I got a lot of respect from her for that. She seemed to think I was a saint for not turning sour over it. I was constantly getting pulled over by cops and let go. Targeted by road rage. And also pedestrians felt too comfortable engaging with me. I drive a new Honda, 1 year old, now and it is so different. I drive the same but probably drive a bit more aggressively now that I can't hear the wind roaring by when I'm going over 40 miles per hour. I haven't been pulled over and haven't had a negative interaction on the road in a long time. Also, my wife now enjoys trading cars with me. Making financial decisions based around the 3-paycheck month. If you're paid every 2 weeks, most months you get 2 paychecks. And all of your monthly bills and budgeting is based on those 2 paychecks. But twice a year there are 3 paydays in a month. And that's when you can actually solve problems. That's when you can get the car registered. Or fix the dryer. Or get the cat spayed. The other 10 months you're doing maintenance and trying to scrape by. 3 paycheck months you can actually try to fix problems. It doesn't directly relate to the amount of money they had. I don't think. But their place was always filthy. I mean, dog shit everywhere. My soul lived with his mom sometimes, but would rotate between her and his father and both places were this way. Dishes piled up. Floors were grimy. The place stunk of dog pee and cigarette smoke. One time, I used the bathroom at one of his parents' places and had to spread my feet while sitting on the toilets to avoid stepping in period blood. I mean, it was so disgusting. My sir was baffled when, after we first got married and moved in with each other, every day he would come home to a, generally, I'm not perfect, spotless home. Now, on the flip side, I once dated a guy whose stepfather was a lawyer. So they lived a lavish lifestyle. The only thing that he was surprised about when it came to my lifestyle was that I did not eat pizza with knife, fork, and a glass of wine. Lol. Not super rich by any means, but my husband said he'll always be surprised about the following. How I lived off of 13k in 2011. Resiliency to survive financially and pursue my dreams of being the first college graduate. How I didn't know what spinach was or tasted like until our first few dates, in addition to hella other leafy greens. Edited formatting and grammar, sorry guys. What I learned in this thread is rich people don't like spending and poor people spend money like it is nothing. She lived in the desert without air conditioning. Oddly, my wife's family and upbringing was much poorer than mine. And X200B. Surprisingly, she is the one who has poor spending habits. I am the frugal one. I always weigh the inherent value quality of the purchase versus the cost. She never does. She doesn't think much ahead of the basic monthly paycheck cycle. She'll spend money on junk. I'll wait. And wait. Then buy something really nice as opposed to some cheap pose that merely fills the gap in the moment. And X200B. It has been the cause of many an argument between us. Both came from poor backgrounds. Hubby now earns 6 figures. I still buy my clothes from a charity shop because I cannot ever fathom why you'd spend a cute $400 on shoes and bags for a season. You can buy designer clothes in a charity shop if you know what you're looking for. I think M&S and Waitrose are just overpriced when you can get a trolley full of fresh food and eat like kings at Aldi for a cute $100. I don't do takeaway food. Funny story though. When we first got together I was making a spaghetti dinner and grabbed a bottle of red wine off his shelf to add to the sauce. I didn't know what a cute 45 bottle of wine was. And still think it tasted pretty ordinary. And I drink a lot of wine. My family is far from rich. But I grew up closer to the upper middle class realm and was making 3x as much as my now husband when we met. He grew up extremely poor. And his family is still living that way. One big difference is how he's surprised that my parents pick up the check when we go out to celebrate a birthday or a graduation. And that my parents ask him to pick whatever restaurant he wants. Outside of the ritziest steakhouse in town. They don't care. To his family, a big meal out is going to McDonald's and not eating off the dollar menu. I'm serious. I was adopted at age 7. I lived in extreme poverty and then all of a sudden I lived with a doctor who bought gifts for birthdays and Christmas. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could go to the store to get food. I just thought you went to the church and had to pray before they give you a bag of food. My wife genuinely thought, and her family still does, that there is a direct relationship between someone's net worth and the labels they purchase. If someone doesn't have a Gucci bag or a Rolex watch, why? It's because they can't afford it. My wife was astonished when I first told her that people exist that are ultra wealthy and yet drive old cars and wear clothes without labels. About to marry him. We met in college and my parents paid for everything while he had student loans and a part-time job to pay for everything else. If he was really hurting, his parents would transfer $40 into his account. But that was pretty rare and they'd give him hell if he asked. He was always very anxious about spending money and never bought name brands. He would also buy essentials like toilet paper by 2 rolls at a time, 1 ply only. He didn't really realize that buying so little every few days was wasting money rather than buying in bulk. When we booked our first vacation, cheap road trip to Georgia, he couldn't pay for anything and was worried the whole time. The anxiety that would keep him up at night made me so sad. He still never fills up his gas tank all the way. Only $10 at a time. Drives me nuts. But now we both have great full-time jobs and he rarely has any anxiety. He never has to worry about money anymore and is so much happier as a result. She wouldn't waste any food. Ever. We went through a few rounds of her getting sick from eating month-old muffins and similar before I convinced her it was okay to toss old food and go shopping. I'm not the rich one. And we're also not married. But I was blown away that my boyfriend believed public colleges are all tuition free. I literally had to show him the financial aid pages for a couple of schools to prove that public universities cost money. I just can't imagine. Like, not even having to think about paying for college. This is super embarrassing and will probably make you all hate me if it even gets any attention, but I come from a family just a bit higher than the top 1%. I was walking out of my ex's garage and I saw a lawnmower. I asked her why they owned their own lawnmower if they weren't in the landscaping business. That was the day I learned most people don't hire other people to mow their lawn. Edit. I was 20. I am actually on the other end of this. I grew up in a trailer park with my single mom and eventually met my ex who grew up in the upper crust of society. It was super obvious how differently we grew up because of it. Egg. I would tend to use things until they literally fell apart. I was wearing my last pair of shoes until the soles fell out from under them and I was walking on my socks. She would just throw things on the floor because the maid would take care of it. She just didn't give a shit about cleaning up after herself or about what things cost for what she got out of it. I've always been frugal to a fault because I never grew up with enough to afford to piss away. She basically got what she wanted when she wanted and never had to worry about whether or not she could afford something. When you have no reason to care, you don't. She had no concept of what it was like outside the financial bubble she lived in. It was like she was viewing the rest of society through binoculars. My wife isn't even significantly less wealthy than me or my family. But they were less stably middle class. She saves yogurt cups and butter jars etc as Tupperware. It drives me bananas. We make a 6-figure income in a lowish coal area. Not exactly what you're asking, but I dated a girl who had received a hefty inheritance from her grandparents and parents and remember eating some pre-packaged meal at her place and liking the food, so I asked where she got it and how much it was. She said Whole Foods and that she didn't ever look at prices. It blew my mind that someone could shop at Whole Foods, no less, and not even consider prices. She just grabbed what she liked and threw it in the cart. Answering as a poor person whose partner's family is rich. I about fell out of my chair the first time we went out to eat. And he ordered an appetizer in addition to his entree. That's when I knew